man, Pachinko episode 2 is intense. We start with Sunja headed back to the market a couple of days later after our ending where they locked eyes for the first time, Sunja and Hansu. She's overhearing a conversation which it seems that the higher class doesn't really seem to care as much about the lower class. They seem to just kind of look past them, much like they do in America whenever you walk past a homeless person. Not to say that Sunja is homeless, but just to say that whenever you don't seem to care, some people can actually turn out being invisible. She's eavesdropping on a conversation of wealthy Koreans. And the wealthy Koreans are talking about Lee Min-ho's character, Hansu, who they're saying that he's an enforcer for a very powerful man and he was sent to be the fish broker, the fish market broker, which I'm not entirely sure if it's on the up and up or if it's more of a mob situation where they get a cut and then they won't mess with you and all of that stuff. They're kind of talking about him in reverence, but also in a little bit of disdain and also in a little bit of fear all at once. But there is one wealthier Korean woman who is dressed so Western. She's wearing a sundress and the hat that is so famous in Western culture that she's very attracted to Hansu, and she hopes that he will continue his life in Korea and not want to go back to Japan. This is another time when you realize the class system of Korea at the time, where Sunja is of a lower class. She can really just kind of stand there and watch, and no one notices. When she first sees Lee Min-ho's character, she sees him shaking down this fisherman and his son, and they're saying that the fish need to be a forearm length and no less and no more, and it seems like they've been messing that up and they've been selling the pieces wrong and things like that. But Lee Min-ho grabs the kid and threatens him. Doesn't just threaten him like financially or whatever. He threatens him physically. He threatens his life. And it's just starting to slowly gear into who Hansu is. After that, we flash forward and Solomon is at a wedding, a Japanese wedding in Japan in 1989. He's with an old friend, and the old friend and him are just kind of reminiscing, chatting, but eventually the Pachinko parlor comes up. Whenever it starts to seem that Solomon is just talking about what it was like in America, the friend kind of puts him in his place by bringing up the Pachinko parlor, and that hurts Solomon. And he brings up this quote where he says that at one point when they were children, that friend had told him that his father told him as a child that Koreans must have been raised by dogs. So you're starting to look into the way that the Japanese people see Koreans. So even in Japan, a Korean person is still being heavily persecuted against, even to the point that I can really, at least from this story, draw heavy comparisons to the way that Americans treat minorities. I guess all prejudice is just horrible. And his friend actually notices his tie. And in 1989, Armani was the thing. It was like Versace, it was Armani, it was all of these Italian brands, it was, you know, wearing the right cologne and all that stuff. And Solomon has that stuff because Solomon is doing that well in life. Solomon then sits down at his table with Tom and Naomi, other co-workers that work on the same floor, but you do also notice that he's not at the Japanese table, he's at the other table. It's not all Koreans where he's sitting, but it's just no Japanese people. And they chat about the racism that Asians have to deal with in Western culture, like basically what type of Asian are you? It's like the first thing that they get asked, which, you know, you would like to think is over, but at the same time, 1989 wasn't as long ago as you think. I mean, that was the year I was born. Hey. The boss comes over to greet the table and Solomon says to his boss, I'm very excited to work with you, all this stuff. But then the boss comes back and says, what's your blood type? And he says, I'm an O. He does say that he thinks O is for optimistic. It seemed like a very strange thing to say, a very prejudiced thing to say, some way to classify a person, and it seems pretty messed up to me. Staying in 1989, Sunja is now sitting with her sister-in-law, which in the books, which I have not read yet, we talked about this, I have not read the books. The sister-in-law plays a much bigger part, and basically the sister is sick. She's not doing very well and she's beginning to give up. And I think that this is something that happens to anyone that goes through years and years of sickness. Sunja, though, seems to be very upset by this. Sunja has always been someone that spoke her mind and everything, and she never told anyone a lie. She always spoke bluntly. And she's telling him, like, you can beat this, you can beat this, but the sister-in-law is saying, no, I'm not gonna beat this. It's just a matter of time, and I don't want to take the medicine anymore. I just want this disease to take me sooner rather than later. Sunja, obviously, I'm not getting too far into it, but there has to be a flashback to Sunja sitting there with her father who's coughing up blood, and she's completely helpless. She can't do anything to help her father. But she can help her sister-in-law. She can keep giving her sister-in-law the medicine. There's a way to save her, but the sister-in-law is in so much pain and it's so hard that she doesn't want to do it anymore. But Sunja doesn't really accept this. You see her crying. So now you're going back to seeing Sunja whenever she was the most blunt. She's young and she's trading tangerines. As long as you can trade a fish for tangerines, then no one is breaking any rules according to the fish broker, right? He sees the young fisherman from earlier trading with Sunja, and he runs over and he says, I'll have you and your father thrown in the ocean. And then Sunja says back, no you won't, we were trading. He hasn't broken any rules, let him go. She says that Koreans are already fighting for scraps. It's bad enough. You need to stop this. I mean, honestly, she just looks like a Billy Badass. She just looks so fearless. To be a woman in that era and everything, it's very powerful to see someone like that. Also, Sunja kind of wears white. I don't want to say it's really white. It's kind of a grayish, but the Korean people are not allowed to wear white, and Sunja wears white, in my opinion. Like, I mean, it's this white. Like, I'm just saying. Sunja returns home. This is the first time you see a kind of teenage Sunja's home life. It seems like they brought on more people to help there, and that it seems that even though the father has passed away, that there's still a lot of love in her household. Her mother is very loving, and she has a cool friend or maybe a younger sister. It's kind of hard exactly to say that is funny, and they actually have a very, very strong relationship. They talk about all of these crazy rumors about how he doesn't wash his shirts, he throws them away. They talk about all of this nonsense. And then Sunja's just like, I haven't heard anything, I know nothing about him. Solomon has a meeting with Tom, played by Jimmy Simpson, and Tom explains why he's in Tokyo. And it seems so strange to think that being the boss in Tokyo is actually a punishment. And it turns out that Tom feels like a failure in a lot of his life. He worked too much and lost his wife. The work that he was doing wasn't good enough. Suddenly he is now no longer a commodity in the business world, so he was sent to Tokyo to, do business for their company there, which is kind of nuts to think about now. It's like you're gonna go to one of the biggest business cities, and that's considered a punishment. It's insane to me. But while they're in the elevator and they're talking, Solomon impresses Jimmy by talking about how certain things defy gravity, and no matter how much you try, there's no way to stop them from rising. And that ambition and that confidence really grabs Tom, and you can tell that they suddenly have just formed a very solid partnership. At least as far as the second episode, that's as far as I know right now. Because right after this, you learn that the Pachinko parlor actually does some kind of shady stuff. They sit there and they nudge the little Pachinko things that make the balls bounce around just a little bit off so that it's hard for people to win. After that, a woman sits down with the one that they just messed with, and she loses everything and she looks very dejected. So as all that's happening, Solomon's father is making really good money. And as a Korean in Japan, it's been really hard to get loans and things like that. Kind of seems like a very familiar situation. And he can actually go to the bank and get a loan to open a new Pachinko parlor, which is a very big loan. And he signs all of the papers, and they said it probably won't be a problem. So he's just waiting for confirmation and when he can open his second Pachinko parlor. You can see the pride on his face for being able to accomplish this. Flashing back to the early 1900s, Sunja is, again, of course, a very beautiful girl that Lee Min-ho's character Hansu has fallen for. At least it piques his interest. He leaves a gift for her, which is just a fish or something like that, but it's a big deal, and she says she doesn't know them at all, but thank you, to the shopkeeper. But on her way back that day, she's stopped by 3 younger men who 2 of them proceed to try to sexually assault her. They pull her into a different room, close the doors, and begin to start their incredibly cruel act. But luckily, one of the young people has some sort of conscience, and then he runs out, and then Hansu shows up, and he doesn't really beat them, but he grabs them, and they realize his authority, and they immediately start apologizing and everything like that. And he basically says that if they ever mess with him again, he'll feed them to dogs. He'll murder them and he'll feed them to dogs. So obviously they're just happy to get out of there. Now Hansu is walking Sunja home. They're on the boat, and you learn that Hansu was taken away about 14 years ago, before he was 14 years old. So he's almost spent more time in Japan than in Korea. He thinks of Korea as a strong and resilient place, but very behind the times. And I think a part of him thinks that he could be a part of that, but a part of him also knows that he's gonna go back to Japan, where they get to know each other a little bit better, and she says, bring your shirt, I'll wash it tomorrow at the Cove, which is a very sweet gesture if you ask me. They meet up at the Cove, and you learn that Hansu is incredibly ambitious, but it starts to make more and more sense when you find out that he was orphaned, and that then he was moved to Japan, where he was thought less than of, and he had to earn his place. He had to earn everything that he got. So the only way he thinks to handle business is to, fit a square peg into a round hole. That's how he handles things. But you also start to learn that he has these huge, huge dreams. He talks about the one time he got to go to America, and talk about how it's everything and nothing. Anyone can be anything there as long as you're white, is really what he's saying. But he also just says the idea that you can get anything you want, candies, clothes, anything like that, like in Japan or in America, it just shows the difference of where Korea is at the time. One thing that they mentioned in the first one, but it wasn't fully fleshed out, is that Solomon has a sister named Hana, and Hana is missing. She's been missing for a long time, and that they're desperately trying to find her. And they find out from a private detective that she used to work at a place called a soap house, which is very much like a brothel. Apparently women let men bathe them and have sex with them, and it's a very dark place to be. And it doesn't seem like in 1989 it was very well regulated or anything like that. So the mother is absolutely horrified to find that the last time they've even heard from her was 8 months ago. So to wrap it up, you have this really cool dual scenes about, I think what it is that it's whenever the characters' lives change forever. And what it is first Hansu and Sunja are out at the Cove doing laundry like they do. Hansu says, let's go look for mushrooms. So they go, and Sunja, when she runs up, she looks so innocent. She's holding the mushrooms, she's running. She's like, oh my gosh, I got so many, he's gonna be so happy. Only to find out that he's laid out a blanket. It looks like a picnic, but yeah. You flash forward to Solomon in 1989 coming back from an unsuccessful pitch to try to get this hotel from the Korean lady, which is gonna get him his promotion. And he gets a phone call from Hana. And Hana is saying a bunch of crazy things. She's saying, I've been pulled into a dark place and I don't know how to get out of it. She's like, don't say you miss me. Say, you know I'm still beautiful. Don't say this, don't say that. It seems very strange. She says she can see him through the mirror, and she says, you definitely have a thing for the girl next door. You can see me, just let me find you. He says, I'll never stop looking for you, I'm gonna find you. And then you flash back to Sunja and Hansu, and Sunja looks so scared with Hansu getting on top of her, he's kissing her, he seems very dominating, she seems very scared. But I don't know if this is exactly the way she saw it going down. It's very rapey, it's very forceful, it doesn't seem like she has too much of a choice. I might be reading this wrong, but it seems really bad. Once they kind of get started, that's where the episode is. Okay, now I feel that we're in episode 2 and we can get a little bit deeper into characters. Sunja. is ever evolving at one point, right? So it's hard to say what bridges the gap between a young Sunja and an older Sunja, but you can see that she won't let her sister-in-law die, especially right in front of her the same way that her father died. It's very interesting to see the way that she has morphed into this different person. And also, where is Hansu? Hansu's not there. Is Hansu gonna be Solomon's grandfather? Is Hansu not involved? Because the sister says, do you still think of that man? Do you still think of him? To be honest with you, I already know, but it's a video, so we're gonna play the game. Solomon, you're seeing the ambition of Solomon. You're seeing that he's not gonna let anything stop him. He has been discriminated against his entire life. He was discriminated in Japan. He goes to America thinking that America is going to be better. He went to America when he was 14 thinking America was going to be better. Guess what? It wasn't. Maybe slightly, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe slightly worse, you know? You also learn a little bit about the parents. Solomon's father is not against doing something a little bit wrong if everyone else is doing it. He even says, it's like, you don't want to be the last one doing it. And then you also see that his mother is a very beautiful woman, but she's just desperately trying to find her daughter. And then, also, let's tap into Hana. She doesn't talk much, but she's going through a lot, and she speaks in these riddles, and she can see him in this high-rise building. So that means she must also be in a high-rise building. So a part of me thinks that maybe she's not actually going through a horrible time at this exact moment in the story. I mean, maybe she was, but maybe she's also married to a very rich man now, or something like that. We'll figure it out. Like I said, this is absolutely an amazing show. It's really opening my eyes, and I'm hoping that it's opening a lot of people's eyes. There's a lot of comparisons that you can draw between the way that people are treated in America, Japan, the UK, everywhere. And I think that Apple TV making a show like this is really telling of what they want to be as a company and what they want to do as content creators. Thank you for watching this video. I'm gonna put the other Pachinko video right here, and then I'm gonna put a link to the vlogs right here. It would mean the world to me if you would watch them, because I like to think that these are pretty good videos. I don't know if you think they're good videos, but I think they're good videos. And like we said before, you don't want to not be the person watching good videos. I mean, you'll be the last person. Do you want to be the last person?